And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Put your thumbs up and say it's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, everything's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, son. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
So, welcome along to another episode of Tickety Boo. Today we're talking about the cost of not getting to know yourself. I saw this line the other day and it said if you don't spend enough time getting to know yourself, you'll end up absorbing everyone else's definition of you, which I thought was quite powerful. And I felt that because how many of us have done that without even realising it? One day you wake up and think, whose life am I actually living here? And if you don't figure out who you are, the world will do it for you. And there is a version of you. It's usually smaller, quieter, more convenient. So today I want to talk about getting to know yourself, why it's important. So, as we get into this, I'm curious. Have you ever had a moment in life where you realised you were living someone else's version of your life? Like you were performing rather than just instead of being?
Not for a long time.
No, it's been a long time for me as well. I mean, I don't mind kind of starting, and it is a long time for me. And it was back in the day when I used to do a lot of DJing in the clubs and stuff.
I always forget you used to DJ.
Yeah, and that was very much a culture that you either fitted in or you didn't fit in. On one side of the culture was lots of drink and drugs. And yes, I did drink, but I didn't do drugs. But it was kind of frowned upon that you fitted into this sort of mould if you were going to be successful in that world. So when I very first started out in that world, I mean, it's totally different now. You know, the nightclub would open at 9 o'clock and it would start filling up till about 11 o'clock. So you had a warm-up DJ who would like warm the crowd up before you went on. So the main room DJs were normally in the VIP bar drinking because it was free. They were also doing drugs. You know, you'd do a bottle of tequila before you even started, but I never could or really wanted to do that. But I felt I had to fall into that mold to be accepted into that world, which is, I was young and stupid. But that's when I recognised that I was performing to stay in that space rather than being the true version of me, which is here like, I love the music, love the experience, and I just want to do that.
It's really interesting. I have a similar one, but I was much younger. And I would say definitely I'm so impulsive, and it was very rebellious when I was younger. But now it's like I will do things really quickly. That impulsiveness has actually served me really well in just being true to myself. Just keep, like, I decide I want to do whatever it is and I do it. Whereas actually when I was younger, and I remember making this decision, I think I was 14 or 15, probably maybe 15 actually. Either way, I guess I was drinking underage, and I remember being out, and I remember making that choice to drink, to be part of this crowd, to be part of the culture, and to drink a lot to fit in with people that maybe I didn't fit in with. And I've still got some dear friends from that time who I don't see often, but we are still friends. But I remember this one particular bar, sitting at this table with people that weren't my friends, were never going to be my friends, and wanting to fit in. And I just did that by necking. And I mean, I could drink a lot when I was a teenager. That would probably be the most extreme version. And I did, and I actively drank too much. Not to the point where I did anything really stupid, but yeah, I mean, I drank a lot. My health probably would have suffered. But it's definitely been, as I've grown older, even when I was choosing the party life, because I went to those places and did partake in everything. But I was participating as me. But it was when I was younger, I was doing it as a version to fit in. And I've changed my life, and I have many circles of friends, so I kind of go around. It's not that it's versions of me, but I have many facets and many interests.
A chameleon.
Yeah, I'm a chameleon.
Blend into your environment. What about you?
I'd have made a great spy.
Really, I suppose I've only got two examples that spring to mind. One was after I'd left school, and I just started drinking. And you actually know a lot of the circle. but I was always sort of a pretty nice lad. And I was performing, I was pretending to be a bit of a bad lad, bit tough, and all the rest of it just laughing at stuff I just didn't find funny. And that was because at that point I didn't know who I was, and so I didn't know how to fit in. So that lasted for so long until I was about in my mid-20s. I had friends that would take advantage, and I mean, not many, you know, only one or two, but then I met another circle of old school friends, and I had genuine friendships and genuine connections, my first lads' holidays and that kind of stuff. And then I had an expectation. I knew how to fit in. I had that social exposure that gave me that insight. So that was good. The only other time I feel that I've really acted in a way that wasn't genuinely me was at a time when I was a bit depressed. I wasn't in a good place, and it was that mask that I was putting on, and it was a performance to cover up. I had all these people that relied on me, and regardless of internally what was going on, I had this mask that was on the outside. And that was that sort of so that was more of a protection mechanism than
trying to hide parts of ourselves.
yeah.
Vulnerability, would that be fair to say, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's vulnerability, because I think have worn masks, but it's not necessarily being with what we started off talking about, where not getting to know myself. It's to fit into an environment. Maybe it's a work situation where maybe back in my party days it wouldn't have been appropriate to share that side of me. So it's interesting that it's kind of blurred into wearing those masks, because we certainly do, or we have, like, if we're not going to tell people it's maybe something that happened in our childhood, well, we're keeping that to ourselves because don't want to share that. That's an interesting one that we've gotten into, that mask wearing.
Well, I think to me, it's just an opinion, is when we're mask wearing, our inner child is very active.
Yeah.
And needing something in that moment, whether that's acceptance or I don't know, but part of us in that moment is maybe a bit vulnerable. And it's actually, I think this is the whole point of this episode, is getting to know these parts of you that come out to play now and again for whatever reason.
And getting to know all parts of you, because there's nothing wrong with any of us.
No.
And also some parts of us we've had to do because we've had to cope, we've had to survive something. Maybe it was something that wasn't healthy or is negative, let's say, in our childhood. Every part of us is amazing and makes up who we are uniquely. But so we get to explore that. So when we were talking in the last episode, somebody who maybe runs away, they think it's a form of self-preservation, but it's looking at that part of you as to why you did. So it's in that getting to know. So you get to understand why you do the things you do, how you think, how you interact, how you have relationships, how you are in relationship. And I think as we get to know those parts of us, we can decide then to choose, well, am I going to change this, or am I happy to accept this? Because you get to decide how you're going to live and choose what brings you joy, choose things, a life by your own values. But you need to get to know yourself, because how often, I mean, I've had clients back in the day who would come and, you know, someone who doesn't even know their favourite colour anymore because they were like, or what they're actually interested in. Let's say they've gotten out of a marriage. They don't actually know what they're really into, or they discover, oh, actually, I don't like that. So they've been sort of so entwined in whatever it was, or whether
and I think also we don't always need to fix these parts of us. We just need to be aware that they come out to play. So there's a part of me that I know now and again, if it feels like it's been rejected or abandoned, we'll kind of have a bit of a moment and do a bit of a backflip.
But it's that self-awareness.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know it's happening, and I no longer need to react to it. But I know it feeds back into when my dad left when I was very young. So it's prodded a scar, not a wound.
Yeah.
But
I think people can spend too much time trying to fix the wounds, like picking picking at it. It's like, no, we don't need to keep rehashing that. We can understand why we've reacted and taken on those behaviours.
We can respect and honour the wound, but not respond to it.
And keep picking out. Because I don't think that is healing. People can get addicted to the picking at the wound, as opposed to, right, okay, I understand that's why I showed up like this. It's something that I do I invite people to ask is like when you find yourself falling into a pattern, you'll start to recognize it. You go, oh, isn't that interesting? So you don't berate yourself. Like when someone does something to you like that, Andy, you go, oh, yeah.
I think when I can look back, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but when I look back at my worst moments in life, where I've not been the best version of myself and not responded and done things in the way that I wanted to, it's because I wasn't understanding the parts of myself that were at play at that point.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And taking time to understand about it and learn about yourself. So you learn about yourself, you understand yourself, from the past. And you learn about yourself in the present. And taking the time to do that, and then that includes acknowledging those parts of you that are good, loving those parts, but then there's bits, frustration, anger, commitment issues, whatever they are that you need to sort of understand where they came from and accept them and just learn how to deal with them.
So why then? Why do we spend so much of our lives trying to suppress or avoid these very parts of ourselves that we really do need to look at? Is it because it's uncomfortable?
Yes, it's familiarity. It's this is who you believe you are, so it's part of your belief.
Yeah,
and every part of you believes it's that way for a reason. So I think what you've got to do is you've got to lean into your beliefs, see where they come from. Are they your beliefs or somebody else's that somebody's put on you and you've adopted? And when you start to understand your core values, that's got to come from a place of understanding your beliefs and getting through those.
I think for me, getting to know myself authentically, truthfully, wasn't great fun, because actually you suddenly realise there's a big part of yourself for a long part of your life you didn't really like that much.
Oh, absolutely. I had to get my head around the fact that for quite a long time I was a bit of a dick. And
I think that's hard, isn't it? That moment of vulnerability of taking a good long hard look at yourself in the mirror going, what are you doing? And who the hell are you? It's quite uncomfortable, isn't it? But doing the work and actually looking at the parts of yourself and reflecting and taking ownership and responsibility and accountability, you can't go back and right every wrong.
No, but the fact that you can look back at yourself and understand that you weren't a great version of yourself, that means that you've evolved, you've learned from those lessons and you've evolved, which is why you can look back with a new set of eyes.
Yeah.
And also with that looking back, it's not about blaming someone else, and it's just you're taking responsibility, seeing, oh, there's the lesson, there's the learning, this is why I chose that, and then moving on, because it's not about blaming. We want to make sure we're not going to blame.
Oh, back in the day, it was about blaming. It was everybody else's fault other than mine.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the biggest things that will ever hold you back. The victim mentality. Yeah.
But what about the guilt you feel? When you look at those older, I'm not dragging you into this, but sometimes when we look back at versions of ourselves, there's guilt.
Absolutely.
It's quite hard looking into that.
Yeah.
Leaning into that guilt and processing it and sitting with it.
Sometimes to accept that and make peace with yourself, looking back, it's not easy at all.
Well, guilt is actually shame hidden.
It is.
It's not that if you're feeling guilty about something, that means you have shame around it.
Yeah. So how do you start to have compassion then for yourself?
Oh, forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Forgive yourself.
Forgiveness. But I think I've said this before. I'm an advocate for forgiveness. It doesn't mean you've forgotten what somebody did or what you did was okay. Let's say you were atrocious, but you forgive that part of you or forgive whatever happened. I had a mentor many, many years ago when I was in Hawaii, and he said, forgive now or forgive later. It's the forgiveness thing that will hold you back.
So you're not trying to justify what you did. It's not about that at all.
No, but it's acknowledging the effects on yourself, on other people, and understanding why you wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. If you haven't learnt from it, then, it's all just...
But so many people don't. They just stay the same. And
Well, sometimes the lesson needs to be repeated a number of times, doesn't it, until you do get it, a bit slow on the uptake.
Yeah.
When you meet people from 40 years ago and you're still having the same conversation that they're still in the same mindset, in the same place.
Well, I suppose you have to ask
think-
yourself, are they making a choice or do they just not know better?
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's a choice. I personally think at that point, it's a choice. It was a choice to work, it was a choice to self-reflect, it was a choice to, well, I'm not saying they've not worked, but they're happy with where they are, so they've chose to be there is the only assumption that you can make.
I mean, I like to think I'm a bit of a late developer with this stuff. It's took me a lot longer than I thought it would.
You took the long way round.
Yeah.
And that's...
Like the path was full of drawing pins and I had no socks on. I had to learn the hard way. But I suppose it's better you learn the lesson
Yeah.
than never learning the lesson. You get there in the end.
Absolutely.
It's... But I think it is... Curiosity about yourself, I think,
Yeah.
is a wonderful thing.
Well, if we're not curious about ourselves, then we're actually taking on that mask as fact or other people's observations or expectations of us as fact. We'll just go, oh, well, this is the way I am, or this is just what happened, or this is whatever it is, whatever the mask or you're choosing to take that on. When you go down the path of self-inquiry, you can let go of those things and just then decide, okay, who am I choosing to be and become? And it's not to be a fake version. I'm not in the camp of fake it till you make it, but you get to choose, okay, well, how am I going to show up? Am I going to change? And some people may decide, well, no, I want to carry on doing whatever. And you have the power to choose.
And the other thing is, with getting to know yourself, it's about being happy with yourself and liking yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of it's about getting to like yourself, because I've reflected a lot. And to be fair, I didn't like me very much. And for me, that's a bit of a problem, whereas I actually quite like the version of me now. And that's not the perfect version, because there is no perfect version.
There's no
And
such
I've figured out, me personally, perfection is not for me. I'm somebody that wants to figure out all my stuff, but I spend a lot of time. I shouldn't drink so much. I shouldn't do this. And you almost berate yourself for some of the things that you do. But at the same time, if I take if I try and wipe all of that out, I become sterile and I lose my spark.
Yeah, you do. But I think, it's very easy to say, I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't do that. Is it not better to ask yourself a better quality question like, why do I?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Also, what shoulds are we willing to let go of? It's that, I should do this, should do that. So berating yourself. Again, we're going back to that negative self-talk. It was a couple of episodes ago, we were talking about something similar around this. And it's, I've lost my train of thought because I was trying to remember the other episode.
That's, no, I
Letting
get...
go of perfection.
Yeah.
But it's about balance.
Yeah.
For me, it's about balance. It's about being comfortable with myself, liking myself enough to not constantly be questioning myself, and being a bit imperfect where I can still be that cheeky chappy and not question myself too harshly. Give myself a break, not be too hard on myself.
I think the other thing you need to look at as well is when you don't spend enough time to get to know yourself, you are going to become the sum parts of the people that you spend your time with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know yourself, you'll unconsciously take on them.
And that has a massive effect depending on who these people are and what their intentions are. You could be surrounded by a negative group. You could be lucky enough to have those people that champion you and have you no matter what. So you take that on.
I think the problem is, in my opinion, is when you don't really know yourself, so you don't really have any values or much self-respect, you tend to gravitate towards what's not good for you. And then you become contaminated with that. And then you're swimming in a fish tank that you really shouldn't be in.
Yeah.
So talking about that yesterday, another story from the therapy room. I'll make it brief, I promise. But I do this protocol called the control room, and one of the things I do at the end is I have a full art mirror, and you look in the mirror and you see the version of yourself that you currently perceive yourself at, and then we wipe it out and we put the version of yourself that you want to be in there, and we leave. And this lady yesterday, she looked in that mirror and she couldn't see anything. All she could see was the shadow.
Wow.
And I thought, talk about not knowing who you are. we worked through it, but that's a really good example of just not knowing. And she was gaslit by her parents all her life. She was a twin, and she was forced. There's a whole lot of different stuff that went on, but she just has got no idea who she is, to the point where I asked her to look at her own self-image, and all she could see was a shadow.
Wow.
And to me, that was a real sit-back moment, and that was quite powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, actually sitting there and asking yourself, who am I really?
Yeah.
What do I stand for? What's important to me?
Yeah.
What do I value?
What am I a stand for? Like what's the hill you're willing to die on? Like what were you really powerful and passionate about? Without getting caught into a lot of the polar opposite debates that are happening online at the moment. But yeah, there's a lot. Like, what is important to you?
What are my boundaries?
I think doing this deeper level work is a lifelong process, isn't it? It's
Definitely.
And it changes too.
Well, of course it does.
We change, and if we're not changing, we're staying the same. And technically, we could say we're going backwards because the world keeps moving. So if we're not changing, we're kind of regressing.
And I see it in the therapy room, and I've referred to it a lot on this podcast, that when somebody generally starts doing this work, it creates a lot of resentment around them because they start to see things differently and start to cut things away or no longer tolerate things that they once tolerated. And people feel like they want to pull you back.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look from the outside again. And now, for one of my things is, if I'm not invited, I don't go. If I'm not on if I'm not on your social media, I don't look. And as far as friendships go, I'll meet you 50% of the way. And I don't mean that's because you've done something for me. It's an energy thing where I'll be there for you, but I know that you'll be there for me. It's not because I've done X, Y, and Z, I expect something in return. But now I expect to be met with a fairly similar level of energy and not just hear from people when they want something or something like that. And that's the kind of thing that I understand as one of my values now that I've learnt. And that's it. Because then afterwards I just go away. When I'm not that way, I'll go away feeling like a mug. There's something inside me that just sits unhappy.
And I think when you've not taken a proper good look at yourself, you will point the fingers of blame in multiple different directions on people and situations and where you've come from and all the rest of it. What I found really useful was I actually sat down, and every person I'd interfaced, relationships, friends, business and all the rest of it, that I maybe once was bitter towards, angry towards, or certainly blamed, I actually sat down, wrote down their name and go, what did they teach me?
Yeah, that's a great exercise. It's a really great exercise.
What did that person come into my life to show me what I needed to see? What was the lesson? And then I wrote all that stuff down, and there was a theme. And then I started to look at the parts of myself that got triggered a little bit when I looked at that stuff and got curious. And that's where it all started.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that or start to do that, you can radically improve the quality of your life.
That's such a great exercise for our listeners to do if they're just thinking of doing this for the first time, maybe.
Yeah.
That's a really great place to start.
Ex-partners, ex-bosses, friends that you're no longer in contact with, family members and stuff like that you're angry with, bitter with, that feel like they've done you a wrong or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, because we've talked a lot about values, and I know I've shared it in other episodes too. So yes, you can write down your values, how you see them.
Yeah.
But there's a really great online free place to go. We're not affiliated with it or anything, but it's valuesinactionvia.org. And you just answer a bunch of questions and it'll tell you what your top values are. It doesn't mean that there's nothing better or worse than others, but it's actually really interesting when I did it. Like, my honesty, no matter what I'm going through, is always in the top one or two. I redo it every so often. And our values themselves don't actually seem to change. How we may react and learn do. But yeah, it's one of my favourite exercises, and I generally get anyone who works with me to do that. It's really interesting.
Amazing.
And we're talking about values, but there's also value, which is how we value ourselves and understanding that. And this is actually one of the things I've learned. So when you start to learn your own value, you start to have an expectation of the value that you expect to have to other people. So that's really important. And the other thing is, when you've got a value, you don't just let anybody in any circumstance. You won't just drift into any environment, because once you've found your happiness and you're content with yourself, it's not an easy process. You're not very willing to give that away, to have nothing in return. So,
I said that to a client in the therapy room the other day. I said, if you had a brand new lovely carpet put in your house, it's just been fitted and it's lovely and clean, would you just walk in there with your muddy boots on and walk all over it? She said, oh God, no, I'd never do that. I'm like, well, when you don't value yourself, you're allowing your friends to come into your house with their muddy boots in and tromp around on your carpet while you just stand there and watch it and say nothing about it. And it really kind of struck a chord with her.
Mm-hmm. And part of that value that you give yourself, I think, is also adds value to how you talk to yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the parts of, because you've got that voice in your head. And if you can if you can work with the narrative, because you can train it, you can choose what you do and don't listen to. And that's an important part of getting to know yourself, actually, how you communicate with yourself. You're in a narrative. Yeah.
You're not your thoughts. You're not the story you tell yourself, unless you decide to be.
That's right. And we talk about having, taking value from other people around us or them valuing us. But when you imagine that you've got that voice in your head, that you have hundreds and hundreds of conversations with a day, that should be one of the voices that should be at your side, a companion, somebody that's got your back.
Well, you can't name, if you've got a persistent negative voice, you can't actually name it. Let's say you call it Lucy, for nothing against Lucy's ever, but it's just that it's like, oh, there's Lucy again. It's like, oh, what does she want now? But I've learned to do that with because I've had depression off and on for parts of my life, and actually now, having done the inquiry work, it's like, oh, I recognise, oh yeah, there she is, I call her the gremlin, there she is. So recognising that now, so whether it's a gremlin or you want to name that negative part and how you talk to yourself, recognising it, naming it, and then I just go, oh, well, there you go, she's passing through, and I let her go, instead of trying to resist or hold on or, just being down in there. So it's okay to have these negative thoughts. We have them, it happens, but it's recognising they're there, because it takes for every negative thought, it takes us 3 to 5 positive to counteract that. So we need to be aware of that. So naming it, accepting it, and so instead of then, let's say Lucy's coming to visit, negative talk, and then if I berate myself at the fact that I'm having negative thoughts, then again, we're on that downward spiral, but we go, oh, well, there she is. And then, awareness is key, self-inquiry, it's amazing. And then we can, so it's not faking, so I'm going to think positive thoughts, because then we're going to get into the toxic positivity, which, we bring up a ton of times. But it's like, oh, okay, it's Lucy. There she goes again, or there's my gremlin, and you acknowledge it and let it go. But it's interesting.
Separate yourself from it.
Yeah.
We talked about this on some episodes not long ago, where you're trying to move forwards in life, or you're trying to make changes, is actually realigning and reconnecting with the 3 parts of yourself: the young child version of you that needed something, the angry or upset, lost, confused teenager, and the part of you that needs peace.
Yeah.
Today, if you can get those 3 aligned and on the same page, you can get to know yourself really well.
Yeah. And it reminds me of something I saw on socials as well. It's like, we are layers. We've talked about this before. There's many layers, and on this journey, you're always going to be discovering something. And you work on your inner child and that part. You then kind of have that angry teenager you've got to deal with, and then you get to the peace bit. But also, it's always, you're going to dip in and out of all those areas. So it's about being aware.
Well, if your angry teenager keeps showing up in your life and you're behaving in ways you shouldn't or you don't want to behave, there's obviously work with that part of you that needs to be looked at. Most of my stuff wasn't my angry teenager phase. It was the young child that was afraid.
I would say most of mine has been the angry teenager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's looking at that. But then again, that's about getting to know yourself, isn't it? If you don't recognise that, you can't change it. No. You can't fix what you can't see.
That's it. And you've got to feel it to heal it too.
Feel it to heal
but
it.
it doesn't mean you have to dive deep and stay in there. It's awareness. I'm not saying you have to go and relive anything or...
Compassion.
Yeah, it's compassion. And self-exploration and self-inquiry doesn't mean we have to go down there and berate it and relive every minute detail. It's like, oh, it can be awareness and you can look at it objectively, like as if you're watching a movie and go, oh yeah, I can see that. But yeah, we're not talking about rehashing and staying in that, what's a dark night of the soul. It's like, but some people like to get there and stay there.
Yeah.
Because they love that.
Set up camp.
Yeah. You've got to move through it.
Yeah, from exactly what you were just saying, you can have this thing where you become self-aware and you look at yourself, you understand yourself, but then you go too far and you go past self-aware and you become self-conscious. Which is where it's tipped over the edge, and then you start. You take all that, or self-absorbed. Yeah,
Yes.
There's plenty of that. And then you tip over the edge, and then your talk becomes negative again.
Yeah.
In your own head. So
And also, you can also be in both camps or all camps. So let's say somebody's doing the inquiry and dark night of the soul. So you've got that. You can be going through that. You don't need to wallow there, and you can be having a positive experience, and you can be also be going well. So it's not about like adopting one or the other. It's about balance and awareness and being able to observe.
Yeah, totally. Well, we did the rounds on that one. Hopefully that's helped you understand about getting to know yourself a little bit better, a bit of curiosity, a bit of self-compassion, and looking at those parts of yourself that you've maybe neglected for a large proportion of your life. We certainly hope you've enjoyed this episode of Tickety Boo, and we look forward to catching up with you in the next one.
If you or someone close to you needs to access mental health support, please contact your GP, or if it's out with normal office hours, get in touch with NHS 24 on 111. Alternatively, contact the Samaritans on 116 123. All calls are free of charge from any phone. You can also find more support information on the Tickety Boo website, ticketyboopodcast.co.uk.